Welcome to the Ghost of Our Village Past. Be ready for a handful of interesting characters to spirit you back to a century or more into the past, to times when prominent people came to visit our Lakes Yacht Club, when willow and the baskets that crafters weaved were always on folks' minds, and the sky above appeared to have no limits. My name is John Anderson. I'm a lieutenant with the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office, but tonight I'm portraying Jonathan Anderson, a Liverpool beat constable from 1836. Let him take you back in time to the very spots to meet these ghosts of our village past. Quite the first lady Eleanor Roosevelt was. Franklin was a lucky man, I'd say. Eleanor was the first woman to speak to a national committee. She was the first woman to write a national column. She was the first woman to perform on radio as a commentator. Eleanor never stopped working for women's rights and racial equality. She resigned from the Daughters of the American Revolution when they barred an African-American opera singer, Marian Anderson, from performing at their auditorium. As for Liverpool politics, Michael Hyde was mayor of the village from 1938 to 1951, when he decided not to run and instead manage his father's grocery store. Michael Hyde was given an award by the village that read that his heart and soul were in his hometown. He will always think of his village and his people as truly salt of the earth.
My fellow Liverpudlians, as your Mayor Michael Hyde, I am honored to greet a special visitor who is no stranger to Central New York, who has been here numerous times before, though on this day, October 1st, 1940, now I may be wrong here, but I do believe that this is the first time our visitor has ever arrived skimming over the waves of our own Onondaga Lake. Our guest will be with us directly. She has taken a moment to freshen up. I do believe it is time to welcome the former First Lady of the Empire State and now the First Lady of our grand nation and a great lady in her own right, Mrs. Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Mrs. Roosevelt, we're so excited to see you. We've been waiting anxiously for your arrival.
Oh, I thank you, Mayor Hyde. And may I remind you that although she's married to the president, the First Lady has need to powder her nose occasionally, as does every other American woman.
Certainly, Mrs. Roosevelt.
And thank you for this lovely welcoming committee.
Would you like to have a seat?
I thank you.
And how was your flight from Poughkeepsie?
It was most relaxing. I feel very safe with Captain Fogg at the controls, even when he told me we were going to plop down in the middle of Onondaga Lake. But he got me safely to your fetching yacht club.
Ah, yes. You should have seen the original Syracuse Yacht Club, a grand 2.5-story building with a wraparound porch and boathouses built on the other side of the lake. Why, such prominent men as Mayor Kirk of Syracuse and Lyman Smith, the typewriter king, felt they needed a place to store their steam-powered yachts. It also fostered the Syracuse University rowing team and welcomed spectators for the annual national regattas. In the winter months, iceboat racing replaced yachting on the lake. Oh, it was quite something, dancing in the cool breeze blowing in off the lake. Being built out over the water on pylons driven into the bottom of the lake made it a unique spot. 150 sailboats and launches could be anchored there.
Oh, I should like to see your mansion on the lake.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
Oh?
It was destroyed in a disastrous fire in 1917.
Oh, such a pity.
But in 1935, the marina was completed with floating docks to act as a base for seaplanes.
Oh, yes. Well, I have to say, I felt a bit safer winging over their Catskills in our hydroplane than I did coming ashore on one of your floating docks.
Well, you are safe on solid ground now, Mrs. Roosevelt.
Thank goodness.
The original Onondaga Yacht Club began in 1885 and then disbanded around the turn of the century. It was started again by Max Wagner in 1934. Originally, members met in private homes, at the Hotel Syracuse, and our own Hydes building. In 1937, the American Powerboat Association held a race here dedicated to the completion of our harbor. This yacht club was built in 1938 and was painted by members of the Works Progress Administration, the WPA. They were not the fastest painters in the world, but they got the job done. The club is not as grand as the original, but the club members have continued the goal to promote boating on Onondaga Lake. They've also sponsored races and taken on the task of identifying hazardous obstacles in the lake.
A most admirable mission.
And what are your plans while you're here with us in Central New York?
Oh, I should like to visit with Leo Casey. Leo is a state policeman stationed in Chittenango and part of one of my motorcades to Watertown on a prior visit. I'm afraid he suffered a debilitating motorcycle accident, and we have kept in touch ever since. I will also attend a luncheon at Solvay High School, put on by the home economics class. And then I shall go to the Onondaga Nation, where I will tour a community building built by the youth there. But before I do this, I would love to tour your lovely park.
The park was built by unemployed workers under the Onondaga County Works Bureau, when your husband was our governor and turned over the land from the salt works to the county.
Oh, yes, I know. And the Salt Museum.
That is located on Old Salt Block 56, which belonged to Samson Jakewith. It was created in homage to our salt production, as is our name, Liverpool, after Liverpool, England, which was known for its production of fine quality salt. That museum will tell you everything you want to know about our salt production. It was built with lumber from the old salt blocks. And do you know, they say that it is always cooler in the museum because the salt in the wood lowers the temperature.
Really?
Well, that's what they say. And you'll want to take in the French fort.
Oh, yes. You mean the Jesuit mission of Sainte Marie de Gunataha.
Around here, we've always called it the French fort ever since it was built.
Oh, I see. Well, I'll be happy to report to Franklin of all the wonderful projects that were started under his governorship. And you seems you have a smorgasbord of sights here in Liverpool, Mayor.
Yes, Mrs. Roosevelt. That's Liverpool, the village of trees, as I call it. Why, we have salt springs that are, well, older than time. And we have a new $2 million parkway. We have 2 large schools with 35 teachers and a public library with 10,000 books, a friendly bank, a chamber of commerce, 32 men's bowling teams, and 8 ladies' teams.
Oh, I am impressed, Mr. Mayor.
2 years ago, December 13th, was the bowling holiday. There was a dinner attended by 200 bowlers, and the secretary of the American Bowling Congress was our guest speaker. Do you bowl, Mrs. Roosevelt?
Not to my knowledge.
Well, you should try it. I'm sure you'd like it.
Sure I must.
Yes, sirree, Bob. We have a prospering little burg here. We received our charter 110 years ago in 1830. I came here from the big city of Syracuse over 50 years ago when I was only 4 years old, by stagecoach. Of course, there was no gas, water, or electricity back then. Been here ever since. My parents came here from Germany and began a restaurant, a meat market, and a general store, all burned to the ground in 1911. There was no fire department back then either. Why, I remember taking the last trolley from the village into Syracuse and then riding back in a shiny new bus. Of course, it cost 7.5 cents. Well, that's progress. I've had the privilege to be town trustee and mayor for the last 5 years. It's funny you should mention smorgasbord. I'd like to offer you one of the highlights of our fair village.
I don't know what to say.
A special Hyde's hot dog from the Hyde's hot dog stand. It's just down across the tracks on the other side of the main drag. It was built by my brother Valentine in 1933, just before the parkway opened, and it replaced the old stand in front of the Liverpool Railroad Station. Valentine got the idea for the fancy Art Deco decoration on the outside from a visit to the New York World's Fair. They used to keep mustard in a barrel and slather it on your hot dog with a paint stick. Val couldn't be here today, but he wanted me to present you with this.
Yes. I don't know when I've been given a more delicious welcoming gift. Could you hold this for me, please? Thank you. I don't want to ruin my appetite for my luncheon with the Solve Home Economics class. And when I return, may I get another? I'd like to give one to Fala,
Fala?
our Scottish Terrier.
Oh, of course. A dog for a dog, you might say.
Oh, and one for Franklin, too, please.
Oh, of course, Mrs. Roosevelt.
If I may, I'd like to say a few words to the committee you've assembled, the welcoming committee.
Please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, since I have been thrust into politics from my marriage to a politician, I have matured greatly from a shy young girl to, well, what you see before you today. Our role as women in politics has matured greatly also. I cannot remember a time I have not been campaigning in central New York. I've made a number of statements over the years, and I have 2 of them that I have selected I would like to read to you today that may also illustrate how women's role in politics has changed over the years. Excuse me. In 1921, to the League of Women Voters at the Canatena Club in Syracuse, New York, I said, the important thing is for women of today to be interested in what is going on in the political world and in the person that represents them. Then in 1930, while speaking to Syracuse University, I said, woman is one of the greatest potential powers for peace in the world today. If she seriously uses her opportunity to promote peace, why, she will accomplish a great deal. Men are hampered in their work for fear that they will be thought afraid to fight, something no man can stand. But women have no such reputation to sustain. And here we are today. Why, as women's input and importance grows, who knows how far she will go?
Excuse me, Mrs. Roosevelt, but I was asked to see that you leave on time to keep to your tight schedule.
Certainly, certainly. Time for one more thought, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing unnerving times today, uncertain of what tomorrow may bring. I feel that if we come together in our communities, whether it's the big cities or the Liverpools of our great nation, come together socially, economically, and in brotherhood to defeat this aggression and fear, why, that is how we will keep America strong. Stay strong and united, my fellow Americans. And I'm afraid I would love to stay here and chat in this lovely setting all day, but I have miles to go before I return home to Hyde Park. I will be sure to tell Franklin of my lovely Central New York welcome here today.
John Fisher died in 1897. His basket weaving craft continued on for another half-decade. In the 1940s, cheaper foreign willow baskets showed up everywhere. And if that continues, then the basket weavers and everything they mean to us will be relegated to a museum.
Guten Tag, my friends, guten Tag. You've come to see the fine baskets created by myself, John Fisher, one of the oldest immigrants here in the village. My baskets were the first ones woven here, using the skills I learned in the old country, where basket making is a prized craft. You can imagine my joy at finding willow bushes, not willow trees, mind you, but willow bushes, along the shores of the Onondaga Lake, in an area to the north, bordered by the Euclid Road. This is the best willow. It goes about 6 to 7 feet long, and there's 100 stalks on one bush. It's cut right at the ground, right after the first hard frost. Now, as it's needed, people can put the bushes right on their own property, but we also import it from different areas of the state. In the village of Lyons, the bushes grow right next to the railway tracks. The workers put them into a railway car and sent them right to the steaming building, right in the center of the village. They were very happy just to get rid of them. They came in from Port Byron also by canal boat. Now, I make baskets for laundry and for many other uses. Now, in the wintertime, when salt production stops, the salt boilers will help us make the baskets. Now, 10 to 12 baskets can be made every day. Now, I get the children up at 3 o'clock in the morning and send them out to gather the willow. They're not happy about that, I can tell you that. We bring the willow and steam it in our willow barn or at the steaming building. There, a full cartload of willow can be steamed for 6 hours and then sold back to the basket makers. Next, we have to strip the willow. The children do that before and after school. Now, it discolors their hands and they're a little embarrassed by it, but I told them, you shouldn't be ashamed of having good, honest work. I have to remind them sometimes not to break the stalks. They use long knives, almost like scissors. They use bark crackers or skin crunchers or strippers to take the bark off of the willow. Now, no one likes that job, but it's what you have to do to get the stripper off of there. Now, when it's done, it's dried in the yard in bundles and then stacked 8 to 10 feet tall in front of the house. And that's how you can tell a basket maker lives there. Now, men, women, and children make 25 cents to $1 a day to strip the willow. A ton of stripped willow goes for about $6. Now, once the willow is dry, it is put away for winter weaving. The next time it's handled, it is soaked for 24 hours in long vats and wrapped in wet burlap to make it bendable so you can make the basket. Now, the next thing we're going to have to do is separate these by sizes. The foot willow is used to make the bottom sticks. This will go on the bench and we'll put an awl through the center of it so it will spin and the basket maker can do his weave all the way around. Now, my bench is a little different in that I have the Lazy Susan so that we can go around the entire bench without using the awl and keep the basket steady. Now, we'll take vertical strips of willow, we'll connect it to our base, and we'll tie them up here at top, all the way around, and keep it very tight. Then we take the strips and we're going to bring it in between the vertical pieces. We take pins to go in between each layer of willow. Now, once we reach the end of a piece, we take the scissors and cut the butts. We keep the level pounded down with a small hammer called a knockdown to keep it very tight to the base so we have a very tight basket. Around and around, I'll weave in and out of the different vertical pieces. When I know I'm going to reach the top of the basket, I'll find a wider piece. Now, I'll also weave that into the basket frame itself, and that will be the top. If we need a handle like this one, we can use the same size, but we're going to connect it at opposite ends of the basket itself. Now, after all that, we have a fine basket. Now, in this part of the village, there are several barns set away from the houses. This is where the basket maker practices his craft. The baskets are kept right up in the loft. In the wintertime, those barns get very cold. We have a coal stove in ours, but we take the willow bark and we put it around the outside to keep the wind out. Now, we gather as a family. We'll tell stories and sing songs as we work. Now, the front of us gets nice and toasty. The back of us freezes. So we'll take the burlap bag and we'll put it around the back just to get some warmth back into us. Now, the willow bark is burnt in the spring. Now, if you've ever smelled a willow bark, it's a smell that stays with you. If you live in the village, you know the smell of the willow bark. Now, I like the smell because it reminds me that that's what puts food on my table in this time of increasing prices. 5 cents for a loaf of bread, 10 cents for a dozen eggs, 10 cents for a pound of beef, 4.5 cents for a quart of milk, all to be taken home in a basket. Oh, and 5 cents for a pint of beer. The basket makers all got together and had a parade right down the middle of First Street. Everyone came out to watch us walking down beside our carts loaded with the baskets. The band's playing, and it's a beautiful day. When the route was over, we went to the local tavern. And it was a beautiful day, what I remember of it. Now, I like the making of baskets because there's no factory whistle to tell me when to start work or when to end work or when to work 40 hours. My workday starts at 6 o'clock in the morning and goes till 12 o'clock midnight. But I decide the hours that I am going to work. Now, there was a story told about a man who was in the middle of making a basket. And all of a sudden, a terrible thirst came over him. So he took a cloth and put it over his basket and got up and went to the local tavern. He didn't come back to work for 2 weeks. We do like to keep some of the memories from the old country. I was born on April 11th, 1811 in Darmstadt, Germany, right on the banks of the Rhine, my most favorite spot on earth. I took my wife and children to America when I was 43 and the missus was 35. Kind of late to be starting a new life, eh? Well, we didn't want to leave our country, but there was political uncertainty and too many people and not enough land, and we also worried that our boys would be forced into the military in this time of unrest. So we packed up everything, went on the steamship, and took a trip across the ocean in 1851. We arrived in New York City on December 25th, Christmas Day. We recalled our Christmas trees in the old country, with the small candles all the way around the tree, shining up into the sky like stars. O Tannenbaum, wie trüb sind deine Blätter. O Tannenbaum, wie trüb sind deine Blätter. We arrived in Liverpool on January 1st. We celebrated the first day of the new year and the first day of our new lives. I found out that Liverpool was known as Little Ireland. Now, the Irish were different, but they weren't bad. They'd come over to work on the canals and to work in the salt making. I came over and I started chopping wood and working in the salt piles. Then I found a willow bush right near the Gillis farm. I took some stalks and I created a sewing basket. And I sold that sewing basket to Mrs. Timmins for 50 cents. And that was the beginning of my business here in Liverpool. It was also the beginning of Liverpool being known as the willow capital of the world. Now, I'm a good Republican, but I would never consider running for office. I do like and enjoy playing checkers, though. America's been very good to me and my family. On a hot Sunday afternoon, the boys will raft down a local stream just as I used to in the old country. My wife is a good woman. She works for the German Evangelical Society. Me, I never work on Sundays. I believe in the German tradition of celebrating the Sabbath by the drinking of beer. Now, some fancy wares are being made now. We have hampers, we have baby carriers all being sent down to New York City. We make chairs for different resorts and expensive summer homes up north, even for cruise ships down the rivers. It's okay if the willow gets wet. It'll keep it from drying and cracking. Now, There are over 90 basket makers in the village of Liverpool. But I was the first, and Fisher baskets are the best. Now, I must get back to work, but I want to share a secret with you. How can you tell the Liverpool basket makers? No, it's not by the smell of the burning willow, because everyone in the village has that same smell. No, it's from the scars on our hands, from trying to tame the wild willow and make it into the baskets that make our lives more convenient. Auf Wiedersehen.
A little after 6 at night on August 8, 1891, James Buckingham jumped from his balloon as it floated over Onondaga Lake.
Good heavens! Good day. I am Professor De Ives, aeronaut. You've come to witness another one of my famous descents from the skies neath the silken wings of my parachute? Should have come yesterday.